The word oubliette originates from the French word oublier, meaning to forget, and its very name reflects its sinister purpose. An oubliette was a small, often hidden chamber built within medieval castles or fortresses, typically accessible only through a trapdoor in the ceiling. Unlike conventional dungeons, which allowed for some degree of human interaction, an oubliette was designed for total isolation and neglect. Its function was not just imprisonment, but also psychological and physical torment through sensory deprivation, starvation, and utter hopelessness. The history of the oubliette spans centuries, particularly in medieval Europe, where it became infamous as one of the cruelest and most dehumanizing torture methods of its time. Oubliettes first appeared in the medieval period, around the 13th century, coinciding with the rise of fortified castles. Nobles and rulers sought secure and secretive places to hold political enemies, spies, debtors, or those accused of treason. These chambers were constructed deep within castle walls or under towers, often beneath the main floor of a keep. Their key architectural feature was the lack of doors or windows. The only entrance was through a small opening in the ceiling, usually covered by a heavy stone or wooden hatch. Prisoners were lowered down or thrown in, and once inside, escape was virtually impossible. Unlike standard prison cells, which at least allowed jailers to enter, an oubliette's design ensured that the prisoner could be left alone to waste away, unseen and unheard. Conditions inside an oubliette were unspeakably harsh. Most were narrow, damp, and dark, with walls that might taper downward, further restricting movement. Ventilation was minimal, and there was no source of light. In some cases, the chamber's floor sloped into a cesspit or was left intentionally filthy to increase the misery of confinement. Prisoners could not stand fully upright or lie comfortably, forcing them into painful, contorted positions. Food and water were rarely supplied, often only enough to prolong suffering rather than sustain life. The combination of starvation, thirst, lack of hygiene, and complete isolation turned the oubliette into a slow and deliberate death sentence rather than a temporary holding cell. The psychological torment inflicted by an oubliette was as severe as the physical suffering. Medieval society understood that solitude and darkness could break a person's spirit. Prisoners deprived of light, sound, and human contact would often descend into hallucinations, paranoia, or complete madness before death. The knowledge that they had been literally forgotten by the outside world added a layer of existential terror. Some captives scratched messages or marks into the walls to leave evidence of their existence, but few were ever rescued. Even in an age when harsh punishments were common, the oubliette stood out as uniquely cruel because it combined passive neglect with deliberate dehumanization. Famous examples of oubliettes can be found throughout Europe. In England, the castle at Warwick had a notorious oubliette beneath its Guy's Tower, reportedly used during times of political upheaval. In France, Château de Vincennes near Paris also contained a dreaded oubliette. The Château de Chillon on Lake Geneva, Switzerland, features a dark underground cell often associated with the poet Lord Byron's writings, though its use as a true oubliette is debated. In these and other castles, the oubliette was not always used exclusively for torture. Sometimes it served as a secret storage or a holding place for important prisoners. However, the structure's reputation as a place of slow death has persisted in historical memory and literature alike. The use of oubliettes reached its peak during the Middle Ages, particularly when feudal lords wielded near-absolute power over their lands. They were convenient tools for eliminating rivals or silencing dissent without public trials or executions, which could be politically risky. Victims could simply vanish, presumed dead or missing, while in reality they languished in darkness. This secrecy also fed legends about the cruelty of the aristocracy and their hidden chambers of horror. As justice systems evolved and more formalized imprisonment replaced arbitrary detention, the oubliette gradually fell out of use. By the Renaissance, it had become more of a symbol of medieval barbarity than a widespread practice. While an oubliette might not seem like an active torture device, there were no whips, racks, or iron maidens involved. Its effectiveness as a method of torment lay in its passive cruelty. Unlike other torture methods that inflicted pain quickly, the oubliette inflicted a prolonged ordeal of suffering and despair. Starvation and thirst destroyed the body. Darkness and solitude destroyed the mind. Prisoners left in an oubliette could take days or weeks to die, enduring a slow, lingering demise that was as much psychological punishment as physical. Historians debate how frequently oubliettes were actually used for torture as opposed to mere imprisonment. Some claim that their reputation has been exaggerated by later writers and tourists fascinated by the macabre aspects of medieval castles. In some cases, what modern visitors are told is an oubliette may have originally been a storage pit, a cistern, or a waste chute. Nevertheless, documented instances confirm that oubliettes were indeed employed for cruel purposes, and contemporary accounts from the Middle Ages describe their horrors. Chroniclers of the time recorded stories of political prisoners, traitors, and captured knights left to rot in these secret pits, even as the practice faded. The concept of the oubliette persisted in culture and literature. Gothic novels, plays, and later films used it as a symbol of hidden cruelty and secret injustice. Its very invisibility, hidden beneath the floors of castles, sealed away from the world, made it a potent metaphor for repression and tyranny. In the 19th and 20th centuries, as archaeology and castle restoration became popular, rediscovered oubliettes reawakened public fascination. Visitors to castles across Europe often peer into these dark holes and imagine the horrors of being cast into one. Today, the oubliette serves as a grim reminder of how imprisonment can be weaponized beyond simple containment. It demonstrates how architecture itself can become an instrument of torture without any visible instruments at all. Unlike the rack or the gallows, the oubliette inflicted no immediate wounds. Instead, it weaponized neglect, deprivation, and isolation. This made it particularly insidious, as it allowed rulers to punish their enemies quietly and efficiently. Death in an oubliette left no public spectacle, no martyrdom, only a slow fading into darkness and obscurity. In the broader context of history, the oubliette is emblematic of the darker side of medieval justice. It reflects a period when personal power often trumped law, and when imprisonment could mean more than the loss of freedom, it could mean the loss of humanity itself. The very name, derived from to forget, encapsulates its purpose: to erase a person from society without ceremony or record. Whether used sparingly or frequently, its reputation endures as one of the most brutal torture methods of the medieval age, not because of overt violence, but because of the calculated cruelty of abandonment. The oubliette's legacy continues to haunt popular imagination as a chilling symbol of what it means to be truly forgotten. The terror of the oubliette lies not only in its physical design but also in the psychological philosophy behind it. Unlike execution, which was public, swift, and often intended as a spectacle to enforce authority, the oubliette was silent and hidden. It operated outside the view of society, a punishment intended not just to kill but to erase. The prisoner thrown into an oubliette was stripped not only of liberty but of identity itself. They were denied any chance of redemption, confession, or even recognition of their suffering. This erasure made the oubliette uniquely brutal. A person did not merely die in it, but disappeared into oblivion. The sensory environment played a central role in the torture. Darkness enveloped prisoners constantly, with no flicker of sunlight or candlelight to provide relief. Darkness itself is a powerful psychological weapon. Deprived of visual stimuli, the brain begins to invent its own, leading to terrifying hallucinations and a warped perception of time. A single day could feel like weeks, and weeks could feel endless. Prisoners were left to wrestle with their minds in solitude, the silence occasionally broken only by the distant sounds of life above them. Footsteps, voices, or the creak of the trapdoor they would never escape through. The combination of sensory deprivation and sensory teasing was enough to unhinge even the strongest will. Survival in such conditions was nearly impossible. Those few who may have been spared for ransom or political negotiation were often reduced to shadows of themselves, malnourished, disease-ridden, and mentally broken. The lucky ones perished quickly if food and water were withheld entirely, but more often, captors prolonged their agony by occasionally lowering scraps of food or dirty water, ensuring the prisoner lingered on the edge of life. The environment itself became part of the torture. Dampness caused respiratory illness, mold and vermin infested the pit, and the lack of sanitation turned the chamber into a cesspool. Some oubliettes were deliberately designed with sloping floors leading to cesspits so that waste would collect where the prisoner was forced to live and eventually die. This mixture of filth, disease, and suffocating air further exemplifies how the oubliette transformed neglect into calculated cruelty.